Hello, welcome to the video made by UGA Big Data. Today, we're going to be giving a tutorial on how to connect to the GACRC, the Georgia Advanced Computing Research Center. We're going to be showing you how to SSH into the cluster and creating a public and private key set for connecting to the cluster without a password. This video will come in 3 different platforms, Linux, Mac, and Windows, and get you connected to the cluster as soon as possible. Today for our Linux test set, we'll be using the Red Hat Enterprise version 6.5 operating system. The first step in connecting to the GACRC cluster is to open up a terminal window. This is built in by default on the Red Hat Enterprise operating system. So, have the terminal window open, we'll go ahead and do an SSH command. SSH using your username. Mine is leevince at Zcluster. rcc.uga.edu. It's going to ask you for your password. Just go ahead and type that in. Okay, see, we are now connected to the Zcluster. And if you want to change your password on the Zcluster, simply type in PASSWD, hit enter, and ask you for your current password. You just type in your current password in, new password, and verify your new password, and you will have simply changed your password. Let's say you connect to the cluster lot and you want to be able to log into the cluster without using a password. Let's go ahead and show you how to do that. The way we do this is using a public and private key set. So make sure you're in your home folder, and you need to navigate to a folder called .ssh. Now, if this folder is not available, you're going to have to go ahead and create this. Our first step is to create a folder. Just name it simply anything you want. I like to name it the same as the host name. Go and open that folder. Right click, open a new terminal. And here, this is where we're going to be generating the key set. So SSH key gen. We're going to be using a few flags, -t for what type of key, RSA, and -b for the amount of bytes you want to use. So 4096 is a good type. And it's going to head and generate that public-private key set. It's going to ask you where you want to save that. We want to save it in the same folder we were just in. So do /IDRSA. You can name this anything you want, but I like to keep it the same as default. It's going to ask you for a paraphrase, so hit enter. Hit enter again, and it's just generated your key set. As you can see here, we have the private and public key set. So now we need to go ahead and send the GACRC cluster our public key set. To do that, open up a terminal window. Type in SSH dash. We're using copy ID. We're going to be giving the identity file, so -i. Make sure you give it the ID _RSA.pub file. And your username. And enter your password. What this tells you is you have loaded the public key onto your Zcluster account. Next step is to create a configuration file for your local .ssh directory. So go ahead and exit out of that one. Hit the back button, make sure you're in the .ssh folder, main folder. Go ahead and right-click, create a new document. Name this document config. Go ahead and open that document. I like to use gedit. Create a little comment here. And we're going to be giving it a host. And we're going to call this Zcluster. This is our alias. So whatever you name this, you're going to be using this name to SSH into the cluster. Our host name is Zcluster, rcc.uga.edu. Our identity file This is our folder we save the public and private key set in. Mine is zcluster.rcc.uga.edu. And our identity file, our private key set, is the ID_rs. And our user is our username. Go ahead and save that. Go ahead and exit out of that. Our next step is to test to see if this works. Go ahead and open up a new terminal window. Try SSH, your alias. Okay, you might get this error. It's a common error. It just means you have right permissions on the configuration file. So, see the configuration. What we want to do, we want to go ahead and drop the right permissions for the config file. Go ahead and try SSHing again. There we go. As you can see there, we'll go ahead and demonstrate that again. Control D, and we are back. Local machine. Do SSH, Zcluster. There we go. As you can see there, it's as simple as that, as creating a public and private key set, sending over that public key set to the Zcluster, and logging through your alias. So if you connect to this very often, this will help you out a lot. And for the Windows portion of this tutorial, we'll be using the Windows 7 64-bit Service Pack 1 operating system. So go ahead and open up your browser and type in PuTTY. And go ahead and go to their download page. Go down here. We're going to have to download the PuTTY file, the exe. And also, we're going to need the PuTTY generator to generate our public and private key set. Okay, once you have those two downloaded, go ahead and open up PuTTY. Click Run. And as you see, we have a nice little SSH client here. So go ahead and type in your host name, type in your username. Go ahead and go to Save Sessions. You want to save the session, name it anything you want, your alias. Go ahead and click Save. As you can see, when you have Zcluster selected, you click Load. It'll automatically load this into the address bar. And go ahead and click Open. Now it's going to ask you for your password. As you see, we have now logged into the Zcluster. Okay, we're going to now generate our public and private key sets to connect to this cluster without using a password. So go ahead and hit Control D and close the session. Exit out of the session. Go and open up our PuTTY generator. Go ahead and click Run. This will allow us to generate our public and private key sets. Let's go down here. We have a few options. SSH, RSA, SSH2 RSA. We're going to be using the SSH2 RSA option. Go ahead and use a 4096-bit. And go ahead and click Generate. It's going to ask you to move your mouse around this area right here to generate some randomness. Okay, now this is finished, we want to go ahead and save our private and public key sets. So to save our private key set, click on the Save button here. It's going to ask you, do you want to have a password protection on it? Go ahead and click No. So you just want to save it without a password protection. And go ahead and just save it here. Make sure and note where you're saving it to. We're going to be saving it in our test directory, our downloads directory. Name it ID RSA private. And I like to go ahead and save the public key as well. Go ahead and click Save Public Key. And click Save. The next step is to get this public key over to our Zcluster. The easiest way to do this is to go ahead and just copy all the way from the top here. Go ahead and scroll all the way to the bottom. Go ahead and right click, copy this. Leave this window up for now. Open up PuTTY, click Run, click on our Zcluster alias, click Load, and click Open. It's going to ask you for your password. Now we need to go ahead and go to a directory called .ssh. To do that, we do cd.ssh. List the files in the directory, and we're going to use vi to open up the authorized keys file. So to do that, we use vi, authorized keys. As you can see, there is already a key there. Go ahead and leave that one alone. Hit the N key on your keyboard, hit A, hit enter, and right-click in the black area of the screen. It's going to paste that key you had from the generator. Go ahead and hit escape. Go ahead and type in colon, W for save, Q for exit, and exclamation point. Hit enter, and let's go ahead and save that file for you. Now, close out of PuTTY. It's going to ask you to close the session. Click OK. Go ahead and open PuTTY again. Click Run. And now click on Zcluster. Click Load. Go down to SSH. Click Author. Now we need to load the private key. So click Browse. Make sure you're in the directory where you saved your private key. Mine's Downloads. Click on the private key and click Open. Go ahead and scroll back up here to Session. Make sure your Zcluster is selected. Just go ahead and hit Save again. Make sure you save that in there. Click OK. And now it's going to go ahead and authorize you with your private key. This will allow you to access Zcluster without typing in a password every single time you connect to this. And now for the Mac version. Today we're running a Mac OS X 10.8.5 Mountain Lion operating system. To connect to the Zcluster, we use the SSH command, so simply type in SSH, your username, at Zcluster, rcc.uga.edu. Go ahead and hit enter. It's going to ask you for your password. And now you've logged into the Zcluster. It's as simple as that. So let's say you log into Zcluster lot. You want to go ahead and create a public and private key set using the key set for authentication. To do that, go ahead and exit out of this. Now we're back on the local machine. We're going to make sure we're in the home directory of the user. To do that, just type in cd. And we're in the home directory, so we need to go to a folder called .ssh. So cd.ssh. Now we're in the SSH folder. We're going to list the contents. So we're going to make another folder. So we do okay. We want to go ahead and list the contents. So we have the Zcluster folder created. So go ahead and cd into the Zcluster. List the contents. There are no contents. We want to go ahead and generate our public and private key set right now. So to do that, we do SSH dash key gen. And we want to specify with a dash type of RSA and a dash byte of 4096. It's going to generate our public and private key set. And it's going to ask us where you want to save this. We want to save it in the current directory, so /ID_RSA. It's going to ask you for a paraphrase. I do not want to use one. Hit enter again, and it generates your key sets. So we do ls. You can see we have the private key there on the left and the public key on the right. So what we want to do, we want to go ahead and add this public key onto the Zcluster account. So to do that, we do pb copy. Use the arrow, ID_RSA.pub. What that does, that copies it onto the Mac OS X clipboard. And now we need to SSH in the cluster again. Type in our password. Go ahead and go into .ssh folder on the remote machine. Go ahead and open up the authorized keys file using vi. As you can see, there's already a key there. Go ahead and leave that one alone. Go ahead and scroll all the way to the end of that key. Once we're at the end of that key, we want to go ahead and hit the A key to insert. Hit enter, and go ahead and paste that, Command V, and paste our RSA key. So go ahead and hit escape, colon, W for save, Q for quit, and exclamation point. There we go. So we want to go ahead and exit out. Now we're back on the local machine. So Go ahead and go up one directory into the .ssh folder. Now we want to go ahead and create a configuration file to utilize our keys we just created. So to do that, we will use vi. Name it config, C-O-N-F-I-G. Go ahead and hit A, and type in a comment for this computer, GACRC. Go ahead and hit enter. For the host, we will say Zcluster. This will be our alias. Our host name. Our identity file. The home directory of the user. .ssh folder. /zcluster. /ID_RSA for the private key. Our user. Go ahead and finish this by hitting escape, : W, Q, and exclamation point. Okay, we've just created that file, ls. We have the configuration there. So to test that, we will go ahead and use our alias we created as the host, so SSH Zcluster. There we go. We go ahead and logged into the Zcluster using our public and private key set. So every time you do this, you can go ahead and just do SSH Zcluster, and it will automatically log you in. So this will save you a lot of time in having to type in your password.